Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to tackle a sensitive conversation tonight and try to approach it from a tiny little focal point. Okay, so it's a big, sensitive conversation with a lot of permutations and explanations, and I'm going to focus on just one. And before I do that, I just want to say, for those of you, many of you are aware of this, but for those of you that aren't, there's a war underway in our universe. A big, big war. And apparently it has been going on for eternity. This is a war that has often been referred to as a spiritual war between the forces of good and evil. It is certainly depicted clearly within the Bible, but it's also referenced in a lot of folklore, a lot of customs and traditions, somehow, some way point to these grand wars and the engulfing of humanity. This war has been nibbling at the heels of society for ages, and it's actually more than nibbling. Over the years, sometimes it's just biting away, and more recently, it has completely engulfed humanity, and it's reached a point where it's a little bit conspicuous. It's like hard not to see something profoundly wrong within society if you're even a little bit conscious. And that's because Earth has become a battleground. Mother Gaia, along with many of the incarnates here, have a desire to move past this war, to polarize into the positive, and to otherwise be free from the forces of darkness, for lack of a better term. And of course, forces of darkness, which happen to be mostly in the positions of power, they don't desire to lose humanity. They actually desire to enslave humanity further. And so that is the tussle as it's building out within this planetary sphere. But it's only a small little piece of a much, much bigger war that's been unfolding for eons. And the day will come when we'll know. We'll know in our lifetime, actually, because we're going to reach a peak point. It hasn't come yet. And then we'll start to drift lower from that peak point. So if we reach a peak point and go into a state of enslavement, you'll see people become more digitized effectively, where technology becomes more integrated into our lives and into our bodies. And if we back away from that peak point, you're going to see more of a profound connection to the heart space, to nature, and to each other. It's going to be a little bit more of almost a healthy communal feeling, where we can actually start to trust one another again. And so that is the evolution as it relates to humanity, and it's also the baseline for today's conversation. Okay, so that's the starting point. The second part of the discussion is actually the focal point, the sensitive aspect, and that is some people are different. Have you noticed over the last couple of years that some people are just different? And I know there are a lot of reasons why arguably we're all kind of different. But I'm not referring to people who are different because their political views or the economic views or their views on medicalization have changed. I'm saying that people are different in the sense that some people are just, they're not as good of people. They're bad peoples. They're not good people anymore. They're just not the same person that they were. Not to say that they're bad, I guess. To say that they're just not the same person. Like, do you know what I'm saying? There might have been a loved one, a friend, someone in your family that you were close to a few years ago, and then something has changed in them. Maybe they don't communicate quite as nicely or as often anymore. Maybe they're just not as happy or joyous. Maybe you find them more argumentative or more focused on money or more career obsessed or more selfish. What I'm referring to are the beautiful vibrations and kind qualities in a person that we've come to know and love seem to be in shorter supply, and in their place are the lower vibrational qualities that are now showing in greater abundance. That's what I'm talking about in this video. And yes, you could say, well, people were traumatized over these last few years after everything we were put through. And I know that that's possible, and it could explain what I'm observing, but I don't want to talk about that here. And you could say, well, there was also a medical experiment that many people participated in, and there was an encapsulation technology for this experiment which allowed this chemical product, gene therapy, whatever, to permeate the blood-brain barrier and actively go and modify the brain chemistry. And I would say that's true also. And I know that that can cause terrible neurological damage. But I'm actually not talking about that here either. I'm talking about something more spiritual. And I am referring to that medical experiment that so many people participated in, but I'm referring to it as a vibrational weapon. And that is that it was deliberately designed to lower the vibration of the incarnates, to lower their consciousness, to lower their connection with their true self, and to otherwise allow them to be more aligned with the forces of darkness that have perpetrated this weapon on humanity. Because in the context of a spiritual war, the way you win the war actually is not by piling up bodies. The way you win the war is by lowering the vibration of the people in which you're attempting to enslave. Because an enslaved population cannot have consciousness. They cannot be tapped into their true self, which is guiding them into a state of freedom. It's guiding them into a state of knowing and divine will. And so, believe it or not, this medical experiment, which was forced on everybody, even the people that had no risk for the illness to begin with, it was forced on them to go to school, it was forced on them to get on a bus. It was forced on them because it was designed to effectively sever the source connection, which is the connection to the part of you that is most connected to the intelligence of the all. And now, what do I mean by that? Resident within you is the spark of infinity. Sometimes the spark of infinity is actually referred to as the true self or the higher self. It's a little bit confusing with all the different terminology, but just keep in mind that light has entered into the body and it actually converts into, using the intelligence of the all, it converts into the cells that make up the form that we call ourselves by as humans, the collection of all these cells. That divine intelligence is connected via a source connection to the part of you that stayed closest to the Creator. Okay, so part of you closest to the intelligence of the all, delivering the information via your own source connection into the human body. That human body then takes this spark of infinity. The spark of infinity is converted as cells, which are then carrying forward with the knowing of the Creator in the body. This remarkable weapon that was forced upon humanity, in which over apparently 5 billion people chose to participate, is designed to sever that source connection, the connection to thyself. And upon forsaking oneself, the beautiful vibrations that are moving through from the Creator are no longer available. So take somebody who's very patient. Take somebody who's very kind. Take somebody who's very generous and sever their source connection. What they're left with is the mind. Just the rogue qualities of the mind, no longer able to properly access the high vibrational qualities of the true self. That's the design of this weapon. For those who participated once, it may not be enough to sever the connection. 2 times probably is. 3 or 4 or 5 or 20, 50 times. I don't know how many times people plan on participating. And you reach a point of no return, effectively. You just can't come back from it. It's too damning on the body. I will say in that same vein that if your vibration is particularly high and your connection quite strong, then it can be sturdy enough to withhold the forces of this weapon, provided you don't participate or didn't participate too many times, or friends or family didn't participate too many times. And as you maintain your alignment, you can effectively keep any of the vibrational qualities of this weapon at bay. I will also say that the war for Mother Gaia, for planet Earth, has been progressing quite nicely, apparently, and the effects of this vibrational weapon are being mitigated as the vibration of the planet is moving higher. So we're given greater leeway, and there's a greater opportunity for people to recover from the consequences of this participation. And so that is the crux of the conversation at hand. And there are a million different permutations to it. A million. There are some who receive saline injections, apparently. I don't understand why, but that was part of the plan. I actually have an idea why. But there are many different permutations to it. And there are some, even more beautifully, who incarnated with body types that are immune to the effects of this weapon, which is really awesome. And that's particularly in the young, the children, whose parents thought it a good idea to experiment on their kids with this drug. And so, in the context of a spiritual war which has engulfed humanity, for those around us who just seem different, and they don't even realize that they're different. Isn't that the craziest part? They're not saying, hey, I seem different. They have no awareness of it. The awareness was coming through the source connection, the awareness of self. And so that part is severed as well, and it's leaving their human mind completely rogue. And so for those friends and family members that have gone completely rogue and their human mind is now dominant, and they're not quite the same joyous person that we once knew, hopefully this video gives you a small understanding of what may have happened. I will finish this conversation. I'll finish this conversation with a very simple moment of hope and optimism. And that is that there have been, I have heard of incarnates who have actively dropped into this planetary sphere to be of service, who have the capacity to request a reestablishment of one's source connection. They actively can reconnect you to yourself. And those people you could be led to. You would have to be oftentimes you have to seek forgiveness for any of the destruction or despair that has been caused to yourself, and you can actively reconnect via one of these individuals who could do the work for you. And so if that's something that entices you on behalf of yourself or a loved one, call for help and ask to be guided to such an individual. Okay, that's all I'll share for now, everyone, and love and light.